Hello, this is the second time I tried to record this because I had to stop recording. Anyway, I received this package in the mail yesterday. I ordered this, I've actually already opened and checked it, but anyway, I ordered this about 10 days ago on one of the Facebook CD trading groups that I'm part of. And usually when you order off that, everyone's very efficient and it's a very kind of a high trust model where you kind of it's kind of like a relatively small group of people, and you don't need a kind of, if you're transferring money, it's only small amounts of money. It's all, it's usually less than $50, so it's not as though you're thousands of dollars. But you kind of, everyone trusts each other, so you don't really need to worry. But this guy took a long time to send this. Like I said, 9 or 10 days, which is longer than the norm. And so I was wondering where it was, but it turned up last night. I took my son to swimming, his swimming lesson. Then we got home. It was pouring with rain. It was sitting on the doorstep. So I'm trying not to show the front label. This came from Christchurch. The seller lived in Christchurch. Very nicely packaged. I'm going to go through these one by one. Now, all of these are quite unusual in the way, not unusual. Okay, I'll describe it as I go through. So the first one here, as you can see, is the last Oasis album, and the last Oasis album for me to complete my discography. I now own every Oasis studio album, which is not that great of an accomplishment because it's a pretty the albums are pretty easy to find. At least the first 3 or 4 are kind of everywhere. But I found them all secondhand, and most of them for about $1 each. This one was, how much did I pay for these? $5 each? Okay, one was more expensive, but I think the 3 of them were $5. But I think I got the entire Oasis discography for less than $15. Anyway, I'll do another video about that. Anyway, Dig Out Your Soul from 2008. The last album they made before they broke up. And I've never owned this before. And I've never seen it for sale before. And that's not because it's super sought after or rare. Well, I guess it is kind of rare in some ways. It's just, it was by this time, CDs were a lot less available. By 2008, 2009, a lot of music shops already had closed down. Most of them had closed down. So people just weren't buying CDs. By that period, 2008, 2009 was kind of the Apple Music, iTunes era, where people were getting music on that, or just downloading illegally, but certainly CDs had physical music in general had kind of started to dry up, and so people just weren't buying this. So you don't see it for sale as much, certainly secondhand. So when I saw this offered, I thought, well, I'm never going to see this, or not never, but unless I'm going to actively seeking it out, it's not kind of going to be the kind of thing that you find easily. And I certainly don't want to pay a lot of money for it. And so I saw it for a reasonable price in good condition, and I thought I'll get that. And yes, it is a double disc. No, when I say double disc, I mean it's got the music CD, which is that one there. And you've got this booklet in the middle, full of Oasis-ish type artwork, kind of 60s influenced. And then we got this extra DVD, very of its time, which I think is some sort of bonus DVD, Gold and Silver and Sunshine, the making of Dig Out Your Soul. So it's a studio kind of behind the scenes in the studio making of. Then we got the making of the video, The Shock of the Lightning, and then The Shock of the Lightning itself. This was put out by Big Brother, which I think was their imprint at Sony. I might be wrong on that. Now, the only song I've ever heard on this is the single, The Shock of the Lightning. This album didn't do a huge amount of anything when it came out. one of the reasons is that they broke up during its touring cycle. This came out in late-ish 08 from memory, and they broke up in mid 09. Again, I'm just saying from memory. I can't remember. I might be off on those a little bit. To see if there's anything. I wonder who produced it. I know that they did this. They were making this in LA. I think they recorded it in LA. The reason I know that is because I used to listen to the. Here we go. Oh no, actually, okay, I'm wrong. It's recorded at Abbey Road. Okay, it was mixed in LA. That must have been what I was thinking of. Because I used to listen to the Russell Brand Radio 2, BBC Radio 2 show, which was around this time, 2008, 2009. And Noel Gallagher was a regular guest on that show. And Russell Brand was living in LA at the time. And Noel was a guest. And they were talking about making this album. But obviously they were just mixing it in LA. I'm seeing if there's anything else interesting there. No. Jay Darlington. Zach Starkey was drumming on this. Was it Zach Starkey? Oh yes, Zach Starkey. Recently fired from The Who. Or fired, rehired, and then fired again. Less than like a week. I don't know what's going on with all that, but anyway. So that's the first thing I got. The next thing, in a similar kind of vein, well, not a similar vein musically, but a similar vein collecting conceptually wise, is the Metallica album Hardwired to Self-Destruct, which came out in 2016 on Blackened, which is their record label. I'm not sure who they distribute through, or what it's a if it's an imprint under any other bigger label. But anyway, just like Dig Out Your Soul, this is a more recent album of the band that you rarely see. Now, I have seen this for sale before, new, and which is about $30, and I would not want to pay $30 for this. At the same time, you don't see it secondhand. Certainly not in the secondhand charity shops. You might see it in a secondhand music shop, Real Groovy Records over in the city. But my point is, it's a lot harder to find these. If I wanted to get the first 5 albums, Metallica's first 5 albums, I could go out today and buy those. Certainly new, and maybe a few of them secondhand as well if I looked around enough. Because they're the first 5 albums of Metallica, and they're classic albums that are stocked kind of everywhere, and therefore they're not hard to find. And if I went onto one of the CD trading groups and said, hey, I'm looking for Ride the Lightning CD, I would have 10 people within the hour saying, oh yeah, I've got it, do you want it for this much or that much? Not hard to find. But the more recent stuff, I'd say, certainly this one, maybe not. Death Magnetic, I actually picked that up secondhand for $1. So, but it's not super common, Death Magnetic, because again, by that period, 2000, what was that, 2008? It's similar to Dig Out Your Soul. Again, the CD age was in decline, and so they just weren't bought as much. Whereas the Black Album sold how many tens of millions of copies around the world? And so it's easy to find in shops. I found the Black Album for $1 in a charity shop, a Baptist charity shop, I remember. But this is few and far between. Not because it's an amazing album or anything like that. It's just, it's of that age. And sometimes it's harder to find these. And so when, again, the opportunity arises for a reasonable price, secondhand, in good condition, I pick it up. Now, what I didn't know is that it's a double album. I thought one of these was a bonus disc, but it's not. It's just a double album. And I think Metallica kind of suffers from this thing where they, some of their songs are too long. uh, it's kind of strange that oh, I guess what it is that if the song's good and it's 8 minutes long, like Orion or something, then there's no problem. Or One or Injustice for All, you know. But if it's 8 minutes long and it's a Saint Anger type song, then you think, well, this is probably twice as long as it needs to be. And you see a lot of these songs. Okay, well, Hardwired is only 3 minutes, but we've got Halo on Fire 8 minutes. Now That We're Dead's basically 7 minutes, 6.5 minutes, 7 minutes, 6.5, 7. But I think there's some good songs on this, like legitimately good songs. Spit Out the Bone. First time I heard that song, I thought that's a good Metallica song. That's a good late era Metallica song. Hardwired itself is good. Atlas Rise, I like the riff in that. Moth into Flame is good. That's got a good riff as well. For me, I like this better than Death Magnetic, which might be a lot of people might disagree with that. I don't know. I found Death Magnetic, for one, the production on it I didn't like. I don't know enough about production to say why I don't like it, but I've heard it's been described as that it's produced very hot. That's when they kind of, the EQ is at across all the frequencies is at max, like it's brick walled, and so it kind of really it tires your ears out when you listen to it. But there's something else about that album that I was never really enjoyed. Whereas this, I enjoyed this more. Their album after this, 72 Seasons, I think I've only listened through to that one. When it was first released on Spotify, I listened through to the whole album once. And then I've listened to a few of the other songs, like the single Lux Eterna, I listened to that quite a few times. But I don't know if I know the album well enough to compare it. Not really a fan of the artwork at all, because you know they've had some pretty decent artwork over the years. Like I think their first four albums are, well, you know, I guess you associate it so much. Those albums are so intertwined with life, or my life, and so many people my age's life, that it's kind of hard to separate the pieces. But I think the artworks for those first four albums are pretty great, very iconic. Black Album is the Black Album. That's a pretty, you know, it's such a massive album that's kind of like the artwork works perfectly for it. It's just like monumental. Load and Reload, you know, I certainly like them better than this. Saint Anger, even I quite like the Saint Anger. I think the artwork of Saint Anger is probably the best thing about it. I know some people didn't like it, but I actually quite like the kind of the illustrated effect of the arm and whatnot. Death Magnetic is very kind of quite simplistic, but again, it's better than this. This is probably the worst artwork of any album Metallica's ever released. Now that I think about it, because the 72 Seasons, it's a bit cheesy, but it's still better than this. But anyway, it's just various bits and pieces and lyrics. And I wonder who produced this one, because I know Rick Rubin was involved in Death Magnetic, and Rick Rubin famously does nothing. Greg Fidelman with Hetfield and Ehrlich. Recorded and mixed by Greg Fidelman. I wonder if they will ever do another album with Bob Rock. That would be interesting. Because, you know, I don't know, I guess there's so many people talking at Metallica know more about the whole situation, but you know, Bob Rock was with them through that 90s era where they really commercialized their sound. And you could say we're more song driven, but then he was also there for Saint Anger, which is just the biggest You know, sometimes you see there's kind of a thing of people saying, oh, in hindsight, Saint Anger's not that bad, but it is. I think with 23 years hindsight, or however long it is, 22 years, it still is terrible. There might be the odd okay song, like The Unnamed Feeling, or parts of songs that are okay, but generally, it's a really bad album. And kind of the first time I heard it, I had the same feeling. And it's quite rare that feelings stay unchanged on music. Anyway, so that's the second one I've got. What did I get? Number 3. Something I've been kind of looking for a long time, and something you don't see a lot of. So this is the Deftones album Saturday Night Wrist, which I think came out in the 2007-ish, I'm gonna guess. That looks like the disc for Around the Fur. Isn't Around the Fur like that, but it's more grey-y and grey, white, and silver, black? Or am I misremembering? So Deftones are a band that I am a pretty big fan of. Certainly periods of their work I'm a big fan of. I'm trying to see when, 2006 it came out. Okay, 2006. So I first heard the Deftones in 1998, or the end of 98. My friend introduced me to them. And that was Around the Fur era. And Around the Fur was the first album I heard of theirs. I loved Around the Fur. It's a brilliant album. Maybe my favorite album of theirs. Maybe not. It's hard. Actually, I don't know. Anyway, then White Pony came out, and that was huge. And that's a brilliant album as well. Then they released that self-titled album. And I felt that was kind of a drop-off from those previous 2 albums. It's got some good stuff on it. Good song, Hexagram and Bloody Cape. But I felt it wasn't as strong. Then this came out, and I kind of was off Deftones a little bit when this came out, and it kind of, this passed me by. I downloaded some of the songs, and I watched some of the videos. I remember the video for Mine, where they're playing on top of a building, and Chino Marino is like fat. You know, his kind of weight yo-yoed over the years, but if you watch that video, Mine, it's M-E-I-N, I think it's spelt. Yeah, M-E-I-N. He's quite overweight. It's like noticeable. But that's a good song. It's Serge from System of a Down does guest vocals on that song. But but that era kind of the self-titled era, I owned the self-titled album, and this album, that mid-2000s era-ish, passed me by. I was kind of off Deftones a little bit. I guess I was listening to more kind of metal. And then Diamond Eyes came out, and that kind of reinvigorated my love of the band, because that Diamond Eyes, like I was saying, Around the Fur might be my favorite album. Diamond Eyes maybe is the other contender as my favorite album of the Deftones. And they've gone on to release other stuff, which we don't need to talk about that now. But it's I never really gave this album a fair shake, and part of the reason is you just don't see it for sale. Why you don't see it around? And so again, this one a little bit different than those other 2. Those other 2 are more like hole fillers. This one is something I actually have wanted to get for a long time. Hole in the Earth was the single, which I was never the biggest fan of. Mine, like I said, that's a good song. Xerxes, that's a good song. I like that. Is it Pink Cell Phone or Cherry Waves? One of them's got a female vocalist on it. It's either Pink Cell Phone or Cherry Waves. It might be Cherry Waves. I might mention, oh God, I can't read all that. Does it say who's guests? Really hard to read that, isn't it? Hey, look, they recorded with Bob Ezrin. Produced by Bob Ezrin and Deftones. I'm trying to see if there's a girl's name. Additional vocals, mine, Serge Tankian, Pink, okay, it's Pink Cellphone, Annie Hardy. Okay, that's so it's Pink Cellphone. That's the song with the female vocals. I don't know who Annie Hardy is. She appears courtesy of Kickball Interscope. So obviously she has a record label, a record deal of her own, or she did at this time at least. But that's interesting. They recorded with Bob Ezrin, because that's not a name you'd associate with Deftones at all. Kind of like two worlds colliding. So this was the last album they recorded with Chi before he passed away, or they recorded Eros with him, but that's kind of the unreleased album, or the one that they canned. That's Abe, the drummer. That's Chi, the bassist, who's sadly passed away. Can't see his face, or he's covering it, obviously. That's Chino, the singer. That's, what's his name? Frank, the keyboard DJ turntable guy. And that's Stephen Carpenter, the guitarist, whose guitar pick I caught at one of their concerts that I went to. And is and nowadays a bit of a crackpot, to be honest. Some of the things he comes out, he's like a flat earther, and like he refuses to fly. Like, I think that might just be because he's scared of flying, and that's fine. But I think he doesn't play shows with him outside the US now because he doesn't want to fly. But he said, so every time I read an interview with him, I'm like surprised that he said something more stupid than the last interview. But yeah, not much else to say about it. Saturday Night Wrist. So those three albums were $5 each. I'm trying to remember if it was $5. Was it? Anyway, it was something around that. Okay, so then the last album. This is another album I've been wanting to get for a good, I don't even know when it came out. It came out 2013? Over 10 years, yes, 2013. Queens of the Stone Age, Like Clockwork. In the little slip thingy. I don't know what you call that. I've talked about this before. I don't know what they're called. Those things kind of annoy me as well because they're a pain. But anyway, this, kind of like I was saying with Deftones, where I kind of went through periods of really loving and absorbing and consuming everything that the Queens of the Stone Age put out, and then it kind of going through periods of not. This album kind of got me into the band again, and I remember I downloaded this when I was living in South Korea, and I listened to it a lot. I kind of, when I hear it, it kind of I associate it with that time in my life. It's got some great songs on it. I Sat by the Ocean, If I Had a Tail, Calopsia, Smooth Sailing. It's just like for me, it's their second best album after Songs to the Death. Now, some people might disagree and say that Rated R is better than this, which is fair enough. I could understand that, but I think it's just some of the, like, I Sat by the Ocean is just such a great, straightforward song. Like a song. It's undeniable. Produced by Josh Homme and Queens of the Stone Age, except Like Clockwork, produced by Josh Homme and James Lavelle. Is that James Lavelle from Uncle? UNKLE, the project that he did with DJ Shadow. He's the British, like, kind of trip-hop producer. Is that the same? I would assume it is. It's the same James Lavelle. Why does this keep going in and out of focus? Lyrics by Josh Homme. Come on, get in focus. Additional engineering by Alan Johannes. He is the guy from, what was the name of the project? him and Natasha Schneider. Was it 11? Is that the name of it? 11. They worked a lot with Chris Cornell. Natasha Schneider and Alan Johannes were involved on Chris Cornell's first solo album, Euphoria Morning. And even before that, they had some kind of connection with Soundgarden. So I don't know all that, but I know that guy, his name pops up a lot in that kind of musical family of like Queens of the Stone Age and Soundgarden. You hear his name. And I think he might have even played with Perfect Circle for a little bit. Natasha, I think his wife or his partner, she sadly died a long time ago now, like over 20 years or something. And yeah, it's kind of interesting his name pop up here. Mixed by because I'm just trying to see if there's any other interesting names here, because like I said, it's interesting to see the names that pop up. Queens of the Stone Age are at this stage Josh Homme, Troy Van Leeuwen, he's still in the band, Michael Schumann, and Dean Fertitta. I don't know who those other two guys are, Schumann and Fertitta. So when did John Theodore start drumming for them? Anyway, a great album. An album that, again, like Saturday Night Wrist, that I've been kind of, if I were to make a list of albums that I kind of wanted to own on CD, this would have been on it. And so this was a bit more expensive. This was $8. Okay, so double the price of the other ones. But not an album you see super commonly available for sale, again, not because of rarity or anything, just because of the age we live in, that CDs are just not as ubiquitous as they once were. And so, yeah, what you see there is we've got a 2013, 2006, so that's a little bit different, 2007, 16 and 2008. And so that kind of era, it's harder to find them. And so I've been thinking about that recently, that if for that era of albums, if I see them, then I should get them, because they are hard to find. Whereas things, like I said, things that were made in the 1990s, unless they're like super rare because they were just rare, you're probably going to be able to find it eventually, because they're just out there in much, much greater numbers than the later stuff. So yeah, pretty happy with that. Lots of stuff to listen to. Haven't really bought anything substantial for a while now, so yeah. Anyway, we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching.